Now, The Drive with Terry Moore on CFAX 1070.
Those of you that got cut off when we changed topics at 3:30 talking about the ferries, get on the line again, 386-1161, star 1070 cell, and you can also email us, talk at CFAX1070.com. In the studio with me, good friend, guy's been around this game for a long time, and he knows a lot about things that are happening as far as the province is concerned, because he happens to be the CEO of the Victoria Chamber of Commerce. But wait a minute, am I reading the right line here? Bruce Carter's in the studio. Now, Bruce, welcome to the program.
No, I was a little worried about what you're going to read.
All right, here we go. Let me just read this to you. The Chamber commends the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, Todd Stone, for producing a cost-saving plan for BC Ferries. Nowhere in here do I see from the Chamber of Commerce, what are you doing to the seniors, and why, on a basic business principle, tell me if I'm wrong here, laid this out for the listeners earlier, and I said, doesn't it make sense that if your volume is down and you're not getting as many people riding the ferries as you used to, that you use basic business principle, lower the cost over all of the ferries, including the Swartz Bay to Tsawwassen Run, etc., and would not more people run? Because isn't basic principle increase the volume, increase the profit, or am I wrong about that?
Well, I think one of the things you need to remember when you talk about basic business principles is that you need to be able to afford to operate your business as well. So the expenses have got to go down.
They can operate it. We're paying the taxes to operate the damn things. What are you talking about?
You know what? One of the challenges and one of the reasons why we're here is that we're getting all the subsidy we're going to get to run BC Ferries.
That's right? all. I mean, sure. That's it. And they won't give us any more.
If you don't accept that premise, then we can change the whole
system.
Right. But the government was very clear. You've gotten all the subsidy you're going to get. You've gotten all the extra you can get until you cut costs. And our concern here months ago was, we're just going to go out and consult again. And we went, no. If you're going to come up with a cost savings plan, please tell us what it is and consult about it. So you know what? I'm pretty happy that we know that they have a bunch of plans to do a bunch of things, and we can talk about those, right? And you're right. They're talking about slot machines. They're talking about charging seniors at 50% of the rate. They're talking about a number of schedule changes. I just got off the phone with the manager of the Chamber in Port Hardy, and she said, well, what am I going to do about this?
Exactly. What are they going to do?
At least you know what they plan to do. Go talk to the ministry about what they're going to do. I said, because you know what their plan is. As opposed to a consultation about, what do you think? You have some pretty concrete data. So I think they're the first of the consultations, which is Wednesday. So I'm going to be talking to that manager again. And this chamber is very concerned about what's happening.
Well, here's what I don't understand. And one of our listeners raised this today in an email. And one of the listeners said to me in the email, what's this argument about BC Ferries that, there's lots of people who pay for the BC Ferries that never ride them? And he said, and quite rightly so, wait a minute, I pay for the highways all through the whole interior of British Columbia, and I don't drive them as well. There's no logic in any of this.
Well, there's lots of logic. I mean, there's a lot of money that comes from the government to pay for BC Ferries. Remember that the entire budget for BC Ferries is larger than the entire Ministry of Transportation budget for all of the roads in BC. So it's a big business.
Yes.
They do need to watch their costs. And you just need to go back to, so we had a 400-foot ferry run aground that had 2 passengers on it.
Yeah.
That's not a cost-effective way to run a ferry system. There's got to be room for changes. One of the challenges that we had, and this is that left-hand, right-hand piece, was when they said, hey, you've got to change services the last time around, they said, well, the only place we can change services is on the Victoria and Nanaimo routes, because our contract with the ministry says we can't. And we need to adjust for what the passengers need.
Why do we need slot machines? Why do we need the kind of the ferries that we've got between Tsawwassen and Swartz Bay? They're beautiful vessels, but we're not operating a cruise ship issue here. Why can't we on Vancouver Island get some kind of special dispensation, and people who live in the province of British Columbia get some kind of a break in the ferry as opposed to what the tourists? Is it hurting tourism in BC?
Well, it's certainly hurting traffic to the island.
Yes.
The rates on Vancouver on ferries.
Yes.
And so we need to do cost controls.
Including cost controls on everything, whether you're shipping in fish, whether you're shipping in clothes, whatever you're bringing in, it's going to cost.
Right. So we need to rationalize the service. We need to make sure that we're operating it as efficiently and as safely as possible. Reliability, we need the 9 o'clock ferry to leave at 9 and the 11 to leave at 11. Do we need a 10? don't know. We certainly don't need one in places where it's running empty. And there are places where the ferry runs
I got the list. I see that as well.
day.
I see that as well.
And with the exception of one route, which is canceled, which, to be quite honest, I don't know anything about, and I'm going to leave to Carly at the Port Hardy Chamber to talk about. Those are all reductions on routes where there is capacity for that reduction. We've already seen reduction on the Nanaimo and the Victoria routes. We're going to see more. That's already been made clear. So we need to share this around the system.
So you think this is a necessary move?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that we can afford to
And cutting back the overall cost to get on board a ferry, where it's $200 to go over for a weekend to Vancouver, or even just a day for Vancouver.
Do we need to address that? Absolutely.
That's the point.
Yep.
So we got to bring those costs down.
We need to make sure we're providing the service people need. We don't need an excess. When we're running empty ferries, we have an excess in capacity.
All right, let me take some calls here. Let's get to Tony. Tony, go ahead to Bruce Carter, CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, Terry. I got a simple question, really.
Go ahead.
Usually comes up round about when ferry fares go up. But for the longest time, the discussion over a bridge to the mainland, it's always been more about how expensive it would be to do a bridge, and from an engineering standpoint, rather difficult.
I've been talking about it for 20 years, pal, and nobody's even bit.
But if the ferries continue to get as expensive as they are, and I see quite a lot, and I know how much it costs, if that continues, are we getting closer to the point where building a bridge is a viable prospect? I'll hang up and wait to hear what...
Well, I don't know whether Bruce is going to address that, but go ahead.
I'm happy to jump on the bridge question.
Go ahead.
Right? And I think that the caller makes a very good point, is that as costs escalate, do we need to look at bridges? And the answer is yes. I'm not sure that the first bridge runs from Nanaimo to Vancouver, but the first one might run from Nanaimo to Gabriel Island. And I think that there are a number of these, the smaller routes, that might well be better served with a bridge and a ferry combination. And that would be a reasonable long-term capital cost.
All right, stay where you are, everybody. We'll get back to the phone lines, we'll get back to the emails, and we'll get back to some of the issues dealing around BC Ferries today, because we're going to talk about this right up until 5 o'clock this afternoon. Got a guy in this town. We don't know who you are, but boy, I tell you, you're a funny guy. You should be writing for comedy shows or doing stand-up on your own. This is the tweet that we got from this person, whoever they are. It's a BC Ferries tweet, they call it. Listen to this one. You'll love this. Due to cutbacks, please be advised that some vessels may only be able to complete 3/4 of their trip before turning back. We're back with you after the news headlines. All right, Kyle Reynolds, take it away.
Thank you, Terry. Here are some of the stories we're working on in the CFAX newsroom. The verdict is in for Brandon Huth. He has been convicted of manslaughter for fatally hitting Tyler Noble, a Shawnigan Lake man, in front of a McDonald's in downtown Victoria 2 years ago. Noble fell back, hit his head on the concrete, and later died in hospital. Huth will be sentenced in January. Fire scorched a downtown Victoria restaurant this morning, and another restaurant next door was damaged to a lesser extent. The fire started in the kitchen of the Real Taste of India restaurant on 4th Street around 9 o'clock this morning. The flames then spread into a Vietnamese restaurant next door. Nobody was inside either of the units. The cause of the blaze and the extent of the damage is still being investigated. And another murder in Surrey, bringing their death toll to 22 this year alone. The latest killing was discovered early today after residents reported a disturbance at a home. Police found a dead man on the property and will only say the death is suspicious. Surrey's mayor says an RCMP task force may be what's needed to stop the bloodshed. Taking a look at CFAX weather now. Rain ending after midnight, then cloudy for the morning hours. Low overnight down to about 3 degrees. And tomorrow mainly cloudy during the day, clearing up a bit in the evening hours, high around 7 degrees. I'm Kyle Reynolds. If it's happening, it's here. Victoria's News Authority, CFAX 1070. It's 4:16.
Call us 250-386-1161 or on your cell at star 1070. It's The Drive with Terry Moore on CFAX 1070.
Drop off your empties in the charity bin at any Bottle Depot location and help support CFAX Santa's Anonymous Society during the month of November. No sorting is required.
When news breaks, Victoria counts on CFAX 1070.
Marty the Marmot recovering after being body slammed on Saturday evening.
2 flag people were the victims of a hit and run at a construction site on Bear Mountain.
Toronto Mayor Rob Ford admitted he has smoked crack cocaine.
Yes, I have smoked crack cocaine. Do I? Am I at it? No.
If it's happening, it's here. Victoria's News Authority, CFAX 1070.
As you shop for groceries for you and your family, do you ever stop and wonder where it all comes from? If you're behind a cart at Thrifty Foods and you're loading up on carrots, there's a good chance they come from Destiny Lane Farm in the Similkameen Valley. But what makes these organic carrots grow so sweet? Do they like the music? Played by farm owner Destin, former traveling blues pianist? Perhaps it's the meditation, practiced by Destin's yoga teaching partner Holly.
Namaste.
Or maybe it's the horses and cats that help out around the farm. Likely, it's the teamwork. From hours of hand weeding and harvesting to washing and sorting, this dedicated carrot crew works hard, but happily. Whatever the secret to their sweetness, if these carrots could talk, they'd tell us to eat them.
Oh, eat me, please. Eat.
Gladly, carrots, gladly.
Go local with Thrifty Foods. We pick BC's passionate producers first. Look for Destiny Lane Organic Carrots. In store now.
Tim Hortons presents Johnny Reed, A Christmas Gift to You.
And the bells are ringing.
Live in concert for one night only.
Like a choir singing.
This Wednesday, Save On Foods Memorial Center. Get tickets now at livenation.com, Save On Foods Memorial Center box office, or call 250-220-7777. Buy tickets at livenation.com.
Jingle bell ride.
With BCAA Travel Insurance, you're good to hit the high seas, where you're good to visit exotic ports of call.
This is a red-tailed palm lizard.
Oh, so cute. And you're good to learn new things. Oh,
very poisonous.
So cute. Because if something happens, you're good to go see a doctor.
She'll be fine.
And not wait till you get home. Policy terms apply. Learn more and purchase at bcaa.com. You're good to go.
Hey, what's your favorite TV commercial of all time? Maybe Apple 1984? The Old Spice Man? Come find a new favorite at the NABS Vancouver Island Gala, a showcase of the best commercials from the International Advertising Festival in Cannes. It's like watching 100 really short films with unapologetically blatant product placement. The NABS Vancouver Island Gala, Thursday, January 23rd at the 8th Street Tap House. Get your tickets at nabsvi.ca.
Headlines, traffic, and talk. It's The Drive with Terry Moore on CFAX 1070.
Terry tweet says this: due to cutbacks, please be advised that Texada Island will be swiveled 90 degrees to Bridge Comox to Westview. How's that? You like that one? Is that a funny one? I think that's a very funny one. Look, it says it all here. Here's something. Here's an article written in the TC. Okay. And this was Rob Shaw said this. He said the route reductions are necessary because of the quasi-private ferry company, which receives more than $180 million a year in government subsidies. That we've talked about. They're facing historically low ridership and billions in debt, and the government has said that that's part of the problem. Low ridership. So. And you don't disagree with me then in principle that we've got to bring down the overall costs to the people that are getting on the ferry. We know that the cars and the trucks take up a big space in there, but the people who want to get on that ferry to go and visit people, the ridership is down close to 20%, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
okay.
Historically.
So if we bring the price down, doesn't it make sense that it would increase ridership?
Hard to say.
Bruce, it's not hard to say. Come on.
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Right? When do you ride the ferry?
I don't anymore.
Well, you ride the ferry when you have to. When you've got something to do on the other side.
Forced to do it, then I've got to. Yeah. But I'd like to go and visit my family on the Lower Mainland.
So I think what most important around our ferry fares are that it's an addition to everything that we consume on the island. It's part of the cost of ferry, of food, of clothing, of furniture, you name it.
And we're getting jammed on that.
Yeah. So we do need to reduce the cost on ferries.
Yes.
Ideally, we would get greater ridership. The economic cost is there. But in order to do that, we need to find savings in the ferry system. We can't afford to run empty ferries.
All right, let me answer this email for me here. This is from Nelson. He says, yeah, people in the interior pay taxes. They never use the ferries, okay? Not in all cases. But I pay taxes, and I never use the highway system in the interior or the free ferries there. How do the costs of building and maintaining highways, especially the sea to sky, compare to the ferries? Put tolls on the sea to sky highway, and let's see what happens.
Well, you know what? If we want to make the argument that we're part of the ferry system and we're part of the highway system, and
it's liquid highways,
and we shouldn't pay a dime.
Yes.
Good luck with that. That's not one that I have been able to do anything with.
And the government's not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole.
I don't think it's a reasonable solution.
You don't think it is, eh? All right, let's see what Murray has to say. Murray, go ahead, please. You're on CFAX 1070.
Hello, good afternoon, Terry.
Go ahead.
How you doing?
Good.
You know, one of the costs of operating BC Ferries, so they've yapped on for years, and I would imagine it's quite right there, is the fuel costs. I don't know if the fuel comes from a line on shore or if it's trucked at night after hours with B trains to fill the ferries, whatever. But, you know, I'd like to know if the government charges themselves tax on the fuel, just like we pay fuel tax. And if so, cut the fuel tax off, and let's find maybe a better source of supply of fuel. Municipalities and so on put out a yearly bid to supply them with fuel for their vehicles and so on, a contract bid to supply the fuel. I'd tell those fuel companies, cut your fuel, or we're finding somebody else to supply us with a fuel. If not, even maybe a foreign vessel to come and fuel the damn things up. C-SPAN have a fuel barge. Maybe they can bring fuel from somewhere else and give it to us cheaper.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, you know what? I think that the move towards the LNG as a fuel is very positive. It's a new technology. It would reduce the fuel costs significantly. You know, it's a BC-produced fuel. It will create jobs in BC. So I think the move to LNG is positive.
I appreciate your input. Thank you for the call. Let's get another call. Ron, go ahead, please, to Bruce Carter from Victoria Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, I won't repeat what I said before, but I was on the verge of making people upset by saying that the system never from the beginning was meant to be a liquid highway. If maybe the main routes, but the other routes were acquired like Topsy. Once the Bennett government went into the ferry business, all those small private operators offered up their services lock, stock, and barrel. But they weren't considered part of a highway system. They were just acquired because it was a bargain at the moment. So when people talk about part of the highway system, I say, well, yeah, the main links maybe, but the others never were. It's become accepted now as part of the theology of living on the coast that every route is part of the highway system, and that's not what it was.
Well, old W.A.C. Bennett, he made that comment, did he not, when he first put this together back in 1958 and said, look, every resident that lives in the province of British Columbia on the coastline and so on is entitled to get from point A to point B, basically, and that it is part of the liquid highway.
He was thinking of the main routes, which caused such disruption with the 58 strike. That's what he was thinking of.
You mean wait, hang on. He wasn't talking about Salt Spring, and he wasn't talking about Texada, and he wasn't talking about Pender Island. He wasn't talking about any of these islands.
No, because they were being served by small private operators, and it was only when the private operators realized what was happening that they sold out. But it wasn't part of Bennett's vision. I can assure you on that.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I'm going to avoid discussions at W.A.C. Bennett. Leave that to you two guys because I'm a little younger than both of you, I think. But you know what? I think that we need to talk about what a reasonable level of service is for communities.
Yes.
And, does Salt Spring deserve ferry service? Absolutely. Does Gabriola? Does Texada? Absolutely. What's that appropriate level of service? What's the connectivity that's required? In order for them to be able to, they need groceries just like Victoria needs groceries. I mean, you need to get cement trucks over there to do stuff. You need to, they have all the needs of any other community.
They cut us off, they being the government, have cut us off at $180 million in subsidies because that's the figure they want to set. You can't tell me that this government cannot put more money into the pot in order to reduce the overall cost of the citizens getting on board those ferries to make sure that it's going to work.
we need to be really careful when you say, you know what, just put more money into this pot, it'll all work itself out. You start to get back to taxation. So I think we need to do both. I think we can have a reasonable discussion about the subsidy, and I think we can get that subsidy raised, and it does need to be connected to inflation, and it does need to rise over time, but we also need to run an efficient ferry system that doesn't run empty ferries.
Do you believe in principle, Bruce Carter, CEO of the Victoria Chamber of Commerce?
Oh, this one's going to hurt. I can see that.
No, it's not going to hurt, but I got to get an answer from you. That we on Vancouver Island have a far tougher time with our population base going from the island to the lower mainland, everything included. That includes shipping costs, transportation, getting over there, wanting to go over and spend time with families, etc., and families wanting to come over here. Do you believe that we are treated unfairly on the island when it comes to the ferry system?
Well, you know what? I'm going to answer that in a different way.
No, you're not. You're going to answer me yes or no. Come on.
You know what? Do I think that the people in Prince Rupert have a difficult time getting to Vancouver and using services?
Yes.
Yes. Do I think we in Victoria or on the island have a difficult time? Yes. We live on an island.
Yes.
Prince Rupert's a long ways away.
Yes.
Is it more difficult? Absolutely.
Is
it always going to be? Absolutely. Right? We live on an island.
Yes, we do.
And so that has a cost and has an expense to it. And I think if you live in Nelson or if you live in Fort Nelson, there's a cost to that. We don't live in the lower mainland where all the services are. There's a cost to that. Do I think it's unreasonable? I think that we've reached a point where the fares are high enough that it's affecting ridership, and we need to turn that one around.
No, I don't disagree with that.
Do I think it's always going to cost us money to ride a ferry? Yeah.
So is it cost-effective then to keep Victoria as the capital of the province of British Columbia?
Well, you know what? I think if you were trying to design where to put the capital today, you probably wouldn't put it here. But history and WAC Bennett have changed things.
Thank you, Ron, for the input on that. Have we got time for one more call? Yeah, we do. Jerry, you're the last call on this right now. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, it is part of the highway system. When you go to Sports Bay, you're on Highway 17. When you arrive in Tsawwassen and get off, you're still on Highway 17. When you go to Nanaimo, you're on Highway 1. Get off in North Van, you're Highway 1. What I think they need to do is privatize all the smaller Gulf Islands, smaller runs like that. Let private companies do it at a better cost to the public, and then start chipping away at all the overpaid BC ferry employees. That gets way, way too top-heavy. I don't go anywhere unless I desperately need to because it's a ripoff.
All right, let me ask you about that, Bruce Carter. Are the pays and the benefits far too high for employees on BC Ferries?
Well, I think the cost of operating our system is high.
Is huge.
And you know what? We need to look at all those solutions. BC Ferries has a requirement to look at contracting out services. You know, I think as you start to look at service reductions and perhaps even the closure of that route that they talked about in Port Hardy, that may well be picked up by a private sector operator who can do that much more effectively.
Jerry, this is for you, pal. You ready for this? This is one of the tweets we're getting from this guy that writes these very funny lines about the ferries. Are you listening?
I'm listening.
Due to cutbacks, please be advised that a zip line will be installed between Quadra and Cortez Islands.
Yeah, and they should also run one between Denman and Hornby.
Talk to you later. Okay, we'll be back. Man, I'll tell you. More to come. Good to see you, Bruce. Thanks for coming in.
All right, great to be here.
Bruce Carter, CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Stay tuned because...